Hello, my friends. I hope you're safe and well tonight. This is the Creep Factor Podcast, and my name, of course, is John Billigan. Tonight, we have episode 2 of our special on strange things park rangers saw on the job. And boy, do we have some interesting stories tonight. Before we get to that though, I want to ask for your opinion. What do you think of this podcast and this special? The reason I ask is that I got some pretty warm reception during the previous special, and we were thinking of making this a regular, more frequent staple of the podcast, I guess you could say. Love it? Hate it? Let me know, as I always love to hear from you. Comment down below. So tonight's first story comes from a park ranger in Delaware by the name of Dana Hanley. Listen closely, viewers, as she tells us her experiences around Clay Creek State Park.
My name is Dana Hanley, and I've been working as a park ranger for roughly 5 years now. This experience happened in my second year as a ranger, so back in 2014, around May I want to say. I was just reporting in for my shift when I was alerted to the fact there was a decapitated deer near the creek. I know, a wonderful way to start your shift in the morning, right? Anyways, I went out and helped clean everything up. We weren't quite sure why this deer had been decapitated or who had done it, but it was obvious it was meant to be seen, as there was a stick with the head stuck on it like a pike. One of the thoughts that crossed my mind was that this could have been some kind of ritual, but as time went on, it got stranger. We cleared the body and let people back in that area of the park as soon as we were able. The rest of the day, things are fairly normal and I go home. The next morning, we find another decapitated deer, another pike, another head on said pike. At this point, we're thinking, okay, someone is probably screwing with us, but what is happening is illegal, so we decide we'll hire an off-duty officer to kind of patrol the park at night. Another night goes by, and this time when I report to my shift, I head out to check on the officer. He tells me he didn't see anything on patrol, so I tell him thanks and head back to the station. I'm the first person in that morning, so unlocking the station, I head in, and what do I find? A deer head in the middle of our break room table and a giant eye drawn in blood. I'm gagging at this point because of the smell and quickly call the police. They do an investigation, look for prints, DNA, anything. Unfortunately, they came up with nothing. I'm of course thinking, naturally, that's what would happen because I'm not sickened or creeped the fuck out enough yet, right? It gets stranger though. We checked the footage and we saw nothing. The deer was dragged into the room. The stuff was written in blood, but there was nothing doing this that we could see. We thought surely the camera is malfunctioning, but when looking at our current footage, we were all visible on the monitor. In an effort to end this, we brought on another off-duty officer to watch the park overnight, and I volunteered to hang around the station and see if anything or anyone turned up. This was a mistake in my opinion. The night started off relaxed enough. For the longest time, there was nothing but quiet, the occasional sound of walkie-talkie chatter back and forth as I checked in with the officer, and they checked in on me, and lots of coffee being made. I want to say it was about 11:30 when I heard a large thud on the roof. I jumped as it was rather sudden, but didn't initially go out and check the roof. 5 minutes later, I hear dripping, and another thud. It gets quiet, but I'm curious, so I head for the door. Before I can unlock it though, I see a deer's body come swinging down and breaking through our station window. I flipped out, got on the walkie, and called the officer. It takes a couple of minutes and they arrive. Together we both went up to the roof where we found the eye drawn in blood and the deer head above it. Now I'm at a loss at this point. I'm debating quitting my job and I'm freaked out. When morning comes, my boss gives me a few days off. I go home, and in time, I begin to relax. All goes well until the final night off. That night, I go to sleep peacefully enough, but upon falling asleep, I have a nightmare that even talking about it now scares me. I'm in the park. It's late at night, and I can hear a low voice. It's almost a growling. Nothing being said makes sense. Eventually, I start to see people in the shadows around me. They have no eyes, and they're trying to cry, but only blood is coming out. Their voices are off because they appear to have no tongues. On the wall across from me, there's an eye painted in blood. I feel terrified. There's just this odd feeling of unease and darkness. The people begin falling to the floor, some convulsing, others reaching in pain to the sky. Then I see my mom. I haven't seen my mom since I moved out of her house. She is crying, then blood pours from her body. The next thing I know, I'm hearing a growling and the blood-soaked eye on the wall appears to widen. I wake up right after that to the sound of my phone going off. It's about 3 a.m, and on the other end is a detective. He tells me my mother is dead. She was found brutally murdered. She called 911, but by the time they arrived, she was dead. She had no eyes. Her tongue had been cut out. Her head was removed, sitting in her hands, and a deer head was placed where her neck was, while on the wall above her bed was an eye, painted in her blood. My mom lives about an hour from me, and we weren't the closest, but she didn't deserve what happened to her at all. To this day, that case and the strange happenings at the park are unsolved. I'm not sure what the heck was going on at our park or how it got to my mom, but I'm convinced it wasn't human. I kept my job as park ranger, though. Though I did almost quit. I hoped I could find answers. I never did. The strange happenings at the park stopped. Sometimes, though, when I sleep, I see that eye in some of my dreams.
Well, listeners, what do you think? Is whatever killed Dana's mother human? Some things to note that weren't addressed in her story, but I later dug up was security footage from the night she stayed in the station at the park. At one point, it almost looks like a shadowy mass is walking around the station as she's making coffee and keeping watch. Another thing is as she's leaving the station to go home after talking to her boss, it appears like something leaves with her. Also of note was other than her mother's blood and the deer's blood, there was no real DNA evidence found at her mother's house. This all makes me believe that whatever was going on at that park followed Dana home. Why, or how it eventually made its way to her mother's, I couldn't tell you. Like most mysteries though, whether we have all the answers or not, they are likely out there somewhere. One final note I find a bit strange. The eye. What does it mean? Also, if we go back to case 4 on the previous episode, Darren said he saw a giant eye peer from the sky. Are these linked somehow? Or is it something simple, like a coincidence? Our next case takes place in Arizona, and was actually sent in to us by a park ranger by the name of Jared Mills. His story goes as follows.
Case number 6. Arizona. Hello John, my name is Jared Mills. I worked with the park rangers at Lost Dutchman State Park for 40 years before retiring. I apologize in advance for not being able to meet with you in person, but I'm old, not very mobile, and don't have much of a voice nowadays. At any rate, I wanted to tell you about something strange going on at my park when I worked there. If memory serves me correctly, the first time I encountered what I'm calling the Arizona Vanishings was about 5 to 7 years into my time as a park ranger. We get missing person cases out there quite a bit, and you have your fair share of people who go off out of their way, get stranded, lost, dehydrated, die, and that sort of thing. However, most of them are found in some way, manner, or form, eventually. At least, those near or around the park itself. We got a missing person case on a John Wixby, who said he was going to hike and camp over the weekend. Well, by the time we got the report, he'd been out there roughly 3 days. Heading off on a search, we eventually came upon clothes, a backpack, shoes, and everything except John. The police ran DNA and it matched John. It was his gear and everything was just sitting there, in a clump almost as though he'd been raptured or something. This was certainly strange, but, in my mind, that's all it was at the time. I chalked it up to being a missing persons case we'd probably never solve. In a joint effort with local law enforcement, we searched for John for the better part of a month, but sadly, there was never a body or anything. We dug, we tried high, low, everywhere, but nothing. Eventually, we gave up on the search. A year to the day after this happened, a woman by the name of Anna Daly disappeared. We searched a week for her, until eventually we found another spot with clothes, shoes, gear, everything, but Anna. There were no external clues, no hints as to what may have happened to her. Much like John Wixby, it was as though she just up and vanished into thin air. What was going on? Who knew? But the local papers started speculating. Between the paper and locals, there were theories of everything from these two being spirited away, aliens taking them, to them simply going crazy from heat exhaustion and wandering off into the desert. 6 months after Anna's disappearance, there was another. A man named William Hendale went hiking with his family and camping over the weekend. Some relatives reported them missing a day after they were supposed to return home, and after a couple of days of searching, we found all of their clothes and personal effects, but once again, no bodies to speak of. Keep in mind, this was a family of 7 people. You don't just make 7 people vanish, or it shouldn't be very easy, to say the least. At this point, tourism was growing because of the mystery. We were at a loss, of course. We'd given out the word to stay in groups and hikes and such, but a family of 7 just vanished, so were groups really going to help at this point? After the Hendales' disappearance, we had a few more. One was 5 months from the Hendales, the other month after that, another year after that, and another 3 years after that. There was no rhyme or reason to the disappearances. There was no pattern, nor were there a set amount of disappearances or set time apart. It was simply baffling. In every single case, only clothes and whatever personal effects the missing had on them were there. No bodies were ever found, and no one seemed to have answers for it at all. The most recent disappearance was that of a fellow park ranger back in 2014. I was there for this one. We were searching for the park for someone who'd gone missing a week prior, a Kyle Lenahan, when Mark Winslow, a 10-year veteran of our park services, went up a hill, while I turned and searched further down. It'd been about 10 minutes when I decided I wasn't going to find anything where I was looking. I got on my walkie and radioed Mark to see what he had found and told him I was heading his way. We weren't that far apart to begin with. I got nothing on the radio, so I tried again. Still nothing. Heading up the hill, I reached the top when I saw all of Mark's clothes, his walkie, everything laying at the bottom. I freaked out because it was in broad daylight, and I was just talking to Mark a few minutes earlier. Now, a few minutes later, he simply vanished. It was one thing to hear the stories and search for the missing, but it's another entirely different thing to witness it firsthand on a search. What the hell could have taken him? There wasn't anything strange in the sky. It was clear as could be and the sun was shining bright. I eventually retired from the park ranger business. I'm grateful for the time I spent there, and I truly loved it. I wish I had answers as to what happened to Mark and the other that went missing.
That is a tale that defies explanation in my opinion, viewers. What do you think though? Is it aliens? Are they being spirited away? Is there some other explanation? Let us know what you believe happened to Mark and the other missing persons in and around Lost Dutchman State Park. I believe it would be one thing to search for the missing, but another entirely to experience someone you work with disappearing firsthand. On a different subject though, I want to take a moment to give an update on the ongoings at Bienville. There has been reported a 50% regrowth rate for the woods over there. Locals are reporting strange happenings such as raining rose petals in the town itself and weird nightmares along with something believed to be lurking in the mirrors of certain citizens' homes. I am working my way there and hopefully will be able to give you a live update sometime by the next episode or two. Moving on now, we have the story of a park ranger in Oregon who swears he encountered Bigfoot. His name is Blake Johnson, and we are lucky enough to meet him in person for the following interview.
Case 7, Oregon. Hello, my name is Blake Johnson. and I've been working with the park ranger since 2012. In July of 2017, I had a close encounter with what I believed to be Bigfoot. My story goes like this. I work at Bates State Park here in Oregon. Most of my shifts are the run-of-the-mill repair work and keeping the park well maintained, orderly, that sort of thing. On the 11th of July, however, I was called up by Mike, another ranger I work with, and he starts chuckling and telling me I'll never believe what he found. I tell him to try me, and he goes on to say he found a footprint about 14 inches long by 5.5 inches wide. He says come and see for yourself, if I didn't believe him. I head up there where Mike is half laughing at what he says until I come up to this footprint myself. The size is about right, but I start looking around and chuckling, asking him how he created the footprint. Mike was known to be a prankster, so I thought surely he had gotten with Josh, another ranger, and made the footprints. Looking around, however, Josh wasn't there, and Mike had a very serious look on his face now. I told him he had to be kidding me and wasn't going to fall for one of his pranks, but he swore up and down that this was real. I laughed and told him sure, before deciding I was probably going to go back to work. That's when my radio went off and Josh was on the other end telling me and Mike to follow the prints. I didn't believe it for a second. I didn't think that Bigfoot was actually the one who left these, but decided to go ahead and follow the prints with Mike. It didn't take very long to reach the end of the trail, and when we got to the end, Josh looked on in shock, aiming the antenna of his walkie-talkie out towards the distance. He told me he swore he saw something standing about 10 feet tall walking off in the distance. I turned towards Josh and Mike and told them to stop bullshitting me, and started to turn when I heard what sounded like a loud groaning, or more like a howling in the distance. It was loud and very distinct, and I froze in place at the sound of it. It happened 2 more times before stopping. I looked at Josh and Mike, and both of them looked scared shitless. It was becoming apparent that these two were pulling one hell of a prank or something was really out here. I turned around very slowly and began down the path and in the direction of the house when Josh asked me what the hell I was doing. I told him I'd have my walkie on, but turned down and was going to check out the source of the sounds coming from the woods. Mike said I was crazy, but I told them the only way we were going to know is if someone was going to check it out, obviously. Reluctantly, the two of them agreed to stay put and kept close their walkie-talkies while I went deeper into the woods. As I got further from my coworkers, I began to feel this sense that I was being watched. Every step I took, I heard nothing, but I felt like there were eyes on me the entire time. There was a slight fear running through me as I continued to make my way forward until through the trees, I'm pretty sure I saw what Josh had spoken about. It was covered in hair, stood about 10 feet, and seemed almost frozen in place. I began to take steps closer so I could get a better view of the figure I was watching, when I heard another loud howling from much closer and behind me. I freaked out and turned around to see a similar looking figure about 9 feet tall and appearing angry, standing before me. I cowered in fear, a hand raised to the creature in a show of submission, when it let out another loud howl, this time towards the other creature, who then returned the same howl. Thinking I was going to die, I closed my eyes and prayed with all my might. And just like that, I heard a large footstep behind me that shook the ground, followed by another step further away. This lasted only a few seconds before everything fell silent again. I'm not ashamed to say I pissed myself just a bit during this. When I finally felt safe again to move, I opened my eyes to find nothing around me. I looked in the direction of the other creature only to realize they were both gone. The footprints, however, were still there, and so I radioed Josh and Mike and had them come down, take pictures of the footprints, and soon after got a change of clothes and went out for drinks with both of those guys. To this day, I'm at a loss as to where the Bigfoot creatures went, but some part of me feels they just wanted to be left alone. One of them could have easily killed me, but instead they let me out with a warning and kept moving. Needless to say, I never went back to the tracks after that. I've come to accept that these creatures are indeed out there. I've gone from being the greatest Bigfoot cynic and critic to becoming a full believer of their existence. There are a lot of things we don't understand in this world, and a lot of creatures we have yet to truly discover. I know what I saw that day, and I don't care if any other soul believes me. I'm here to tell you, Bigfoot exists.
Well, listeners, what do you think? Does Bigfoot exist? If so, do you believe they aim to harm people? Or do you believe, like Blake, they just want to be left alone? Have any of you experienced Bigfoot sightings? Feel free to let me know, and do be sure to be so kind as to share your experiences with us. We're almost at the end of our broadcast, folks. We have quite possibly the most out there and unexplainable story for last. This final case was sent in by a ranger working in Alabama, and it'll make you question everything you believe and know about the world around you.
Case number 8, Alabama. Hi John, I just wanted to send in my story about a particularly strange phenomenon that happened in 2012 at Wind Creek State Park here in Alabama. My name is Dale Simpson, and I was with the park rangers for about 20 years during my career with them. My story starts simply enough. It was June, and it was fairly hot out. The forecast called for clear skies and sun all day long. That forecast couldn't have been more wrong. It started out hot and sunny, but by the time noon, we noticed quite a few clouds beginning to appear overhead. Thinking nothing of it, we went out about our day, working around the park and also watching as people enjoyed their summer. Then we heard the first rumbles of thunder. This was a bit of a strange rumbling though. It almost sounded like it was vocalizing something. A few concerning vacationers asked if it was supposed to rain today. I told them last I checked no, but I'd go ahead and check again to put their minds at ease. Pulling up the weather on my phone, there appeared to be nothing appearing on the radar. Stranger yet, the forecast still said sunny skies and clear skies. I told the locals it was still showing sunny, and we all had a laugh at how wrong the forecast was. We thought that maybe a fast-developing storm was getting ready to hit, and they didn't have the chance to update things, so we advised everyone to keep an eye on the skies, and if need be, pack up and go home, or find some form of shelter. We even offered to open up an unused rec area to some if things got too crazy. It's about 3 p.m., when suddenly a large bolt of lightning strikes a tree, and it catches on fire. This quickly followed by an abnormally loud booming thunder, and I and a few other rangers quickly rushed people inside, and even offered to open the ranger station to a few of them for shelter. The sky is getting dark and gray, and parts are starting to look greenish in a hue of black in most other areas. I checked the weather again, and noticed there appears to be nothing appearing on the radar. What the hell? I think to myself. No sooner do I do that, does the rain begin to pour, and the wind begins to pick up. The good news was, the fire on the tree was put out quickly, but the bad news was, off in the distance a funnel cloud was beginning to form. It wasn't forming slowly either, it was dropping towards the ground quickly. We got everyone inside, and at this point, locked down everything we could. I was in the ranger station and a few of my crew were barricading in wrecked buildings, or whatever they could find decent shelter in. It wasn't long before a loud resounding boom rang out. Normally, you'd be hearing a freight train sound at this point as the tornado was clearly on the ground, but God is my witness, that wasn't what we heard. No, we heard screams of pain and anguish followed by the sound of loud guttural growling like you've never heard. I just pray I never hear it again. The sky was no longer black, but completely red and peering into the monitor. I watched as a building next to us hit. There were screams of terror, and looking at the storm from the window, I swear I saw a face in this tornado. The tornado was blood red, and the screams continued on for what seemed like a lifetime, when suddenly it faded, Just as quickly as it came, the red vortex shot to the sky above, and a bolt of lightning struck the earth before another boom rang out. The skies returned to normal. The clouds parted in the building. All along, everyone who had been inside simply wasn't there anymore. The sun had come out. You'd never know the horror we witnessed had ever happened, and that was that. In a tornado, there should be debris left behind, but in this, there was nothing, nor anyone consumed. Come back again, and there were no bodies, and it was as though the building had just vanished. Nothing ever appeared on radar, and further investigation into the matter left it unexplained. I saw a face, and I saw arms reaching in the vortex. Instead of thunder, I heard human screams. I swear to you I'm not crazy. Go ahead and check with some of the other locals and ask them what happened that day, assuming they'll talk about it at all. As a follow-up to this case, it should be noted I did contact residents who were there that day, and the ones willing to speak with me on that matter did indeed claim to have witnessed similar events. A sudden tornado that seemed to scream in rage. It was blood red, had a face, and there were many other arms reaching from it, and faces seemingly screaming in pain. Strangely though, anyone who tried to record what was happening turned up nothing on their recordings. It looked like a sunny day in the footage. So, what happened? I'm inclined to believe that this strange phenomenon has something to it, as there have since been ice storms where there has no recorded activity, and rain on sunny days, sun on rainy days, and odd disappearances after these events. Others have come out claiming to hear voices in the wind, and all those who have experienced any of the strange phenomena that come with these odd storms swear the weather itself is sentient. There was another case that same summer where a weather forecast showed a tornado warning for specific areas to be safe, and the tornado itself seemed to defy all logic by constantly moving outside of the predicted path as the forecast was happening. Focusing, however, on the events Ranger Dale and company, which seemed to be the strangest and most terrifying of them all thus far, lived through, you have to wonder, where were the debris? Where were the bodies sucked up into that storm? Why isn't anything appearing on the footage? I can't begin to know what happened myself, but I'd imagine if I'd experienced something like that, I'd probably be afraid to go outside again. My final thoughts. So, to wrap things up here, we've covered some very out there and some downright disturbing cases tonight. The first case of the night saw a ranger lose her mother to a mysterious entity that appeared to follow her home. Why kill her mother and not the ranger herself? Is the entity still with her now? What is up with the eye? Is it linked to last episode's final case? Or am I speculating too much? What do you think of it all? Tonight's second case followed a former ranger named Jared Mills, and his complete loss as he watched many around his park and his own workers simply disappear over time. Were they raptured? Was it some sort of alien life form or UFO? Did something else happen? The third case tonight followed a Bigfoot skeptic turned true believer as he followed the trail of a Bigfoot only to come face to face with another one. What are your beliefs about Bigfoot? Are they good, evil, indifferent? Do you think we'll ever have solid proof of them? Have you ever seen one yourself? In the most perplexing and possibly scariest story of the night, we were told about sentient weather that seemed to spawn a blood-red tornado with a face. Consuming a large group of people, it simply vanished, leaving no trace behind. Those consumed had never been found, nor has anyone found any wreckage from the building or anything. What do you think happened to the lost in the storm? What caused the storm? Is it even actually the weather or some kind of unknown monstrosity that can somehow control the weather? There are so many questions we could ask ourselves. But, sadly, we are out of time tonight. I'd just like to take a moment to say thank you to all our listeners and viewers for your support, and for the warm reception I've received from many of you as I continue to work on this podcast. Next week, we have a longer show and it will revolve around a single case. Case 9 will definitely leave you disturbed. My name is John Billigan, and I'm signing off for the Creep Factor podcast. I hope to see you next episode. You have a safe night, everyone, and remember, you are never truly alone.